Hello, I'm Tim Judah. I'm the Balkans correspondent for The Economist, and it's my pleasure to open this panel, so please all come and sit down. We'd have no time to spare, so let's kick off. We've been given, Sonia has given us here some talking points, and I have a couple of instructions for my panelists, which is basically we're going to have an introduction of about 5 minutes each, and then we're going to discuss what comes up. Officially, we're talking about the Berlin process. I will just remind you of the points that we've been set. Has it helped resolve still open bilateral issues? And is it encouraging political dialogue between the West Balkans 6? What comments can be made about overtures anticipating the creation of a customs union, common labour law? And then we're going to talk about infrastructure, youth cooperation, etc., etc. Actually, what I'd really like to know is this for real? Is this really happening? Is this really serious? Or are we just pretending? So I think there's no point in me rabbiting on anymore. Let's go straight to Mr. Dacic. A fixture on the Balkan and political scene. You've been around so long. There's no one better to answer a question of are we really moving? Is something really happening, or are we just pretending that something's happening? So, Mr. Dacic, over to you.
Hvala. Thank you. Pa znate, ovo je najteže pitanje koje mi je postavio odmah na početku.
And I've got the most difficult question at the very beginning, you know.
Absolutely.
I onda sve što su mi napisali da treba da kažem mogu da ostavim sad.
And now I can leave my carefully written speech next to my chair and forget about it.
I ja se ponekad često pitam da li koliko su ekvivalentni ovi turbulentni događaji u našem regionu, pa i izjave, u odnosu na jednu dosta idiličnu atmosferu koja vlada na tim raznim sastancima. Zapadno-balkanske šestorke ili Zapadnog Balkana, kako god hoćete.
I often find myself in the situation to ask this question, how equivalent, how relevant the very nice, peaceful, harmonious atmosphere that we have at the usual Balkan meetings, the Balkan Six or the West Balkan meetings, in comparison to what we hear in real life and sort of all the turbulent events that are constantly reported in the region.
Tako da jedno vrijeme sam razmišljao da je možda najbolje da berlinski proces stalno traje, odnosno da sastanci stalno traju u inostranstvu kako ne bismo imali vremena da se svađamo ovdje kad dođemo kod kući.
So I had this brilliant idea, maybe we should have the Berlin process constantly going, ongoing meetings abroad, so we would have no time to quarrel back at home.
Ali šalu na stranu, to je jedna korisna inicijativa koja pokazuje da barem želju da se velike evropske zemlje bave ili da barem jednom godišnje pominju pitanje proširenja Evropske unije ovdje u našem regionu.
But, joking aside, it is a I find very useful initiative, and it's very good, and it demonstrates the will, the willingness of the big European countries to at least once a year consider the region and talk about the enlargement in this direction also.
Dobro je da ova tema bude u fokusu, odnosno da se uopšte o njoj raspravlja. Mislim, tema proširenja.
It is good to keep the subject of enlargement in focus, sort of, to keep it on the table as the topic, to talk about it.
Mi smo usaglasili više od 20 dokumenata u okviru ove grupe, takozvanog Zapadni Balkan 6 i berlinskog procesa.
And as you know, we had more than 20 papers that we jointly accepted, agreed upon as part of the West Balkan 6 group and during the Berlin process.
Svakako da berlinski proces doprinosi jačanju međusobnog političkog dijaloga u regionu. Nakon što je Srbija bila domaćin, naravno, nekoliko sastanaka i ovde je održana 2014. godine u oktobru i domaćin bio prvi sastanak u formatu ministara spoljnih poslova Zapadnog Balkana.
It is good. We are beefing up the dialogue. It's happening in the region. Serbia was we had several meetings even in Serbia. We were the hosts of the first ever meeting of the foreign ministers of the West Balkan countries in 2014.
Takođe,
within this
usaglašen je konsolidovani višegodišnji akcioni plan za uspostavljanje regionalnog ekonomskog područja na Zapadnom Balkanu.
Another important achievement is that we have agreed on the multi-annual action plan to establish a joint common economic area of the Western Balkans.
Privredne komore u regionu dobro sarađuju.
And we have a very good cooperation between the Chamber of Commerce in the region, regional chambers of commerce.
I ono što je za Srbiju izuzetno značajno, to je da privodimo polako kraju donošenje odluke o sedištu transportne zajednice. Postoji opšta saglasnost učesnika u procesu da sedište transportne zajednice bude u Beogradu, što je za nas veoma bitno jer je Srbija ima veoma malo sedišta raznih međunarodnih organizacija u našoj zemlji.
We are also talking and we came to an agreement. There is a general acceptance that within the framework of establishing the Western Balkan Transport Community, the seat of the community will be in Belgrade, which is very good news for Serbia because few and far between international organizations have their seats here in Belgrade, so it puts us on the map.
Tu je i regionalna kancelarija za mlade.
We have the regional office for the youth.
I mnogo projekata koji za sada postoje, ali nisu još operacionalizovani, kao što je izgradnja infrastrukturnih koridora. Između ostalog i čuveni taj put o kome smo govorili, Niš-Priština. To sam ja pomenuo na prvom sastanku koji smo imali sa Tačijem, kada je započinjao dijalog u Briselu. I osim oduševljenja iz Brisela, nismo još došli do implementacije tog projekta koji ima ne samo simbolički značaj, nego i otprilike to je jedna žila kucavica koja je važna za protok građana, pa i robe i sa Kosova dalje, ne samo do centralne Srbije, nego uopšte i zapadne Evrope.
Another very important thing as part of many projects that were discussed and being agreed on is everything that we talked in the domain of infrastructure, especially road infrastructure. One of the key things, big initiative which was not yet implemented is this famous highway between Niš and Pristina. Important link. I mentioned it already when we had the first meeting with Taci, when we kicked off the Brussels dialogue with Kosovo, and when I came up with this idea, it caused general delight among our Brussels audience, but after the delight there was no implementation yet. However, this is a very important thing. It is not just a symbolic link between Serbia and Kosovo. It is a key artery, traffic artery, which enables both the people and the goods from Kosovo to come not only to central Serbia, but onwards to Europe.
Znači, na kraju mogu da kažem da bez obzira na to što će sada svako da meri neke projekte, koliko su oni, koliko procenata su ostvareni, koliko nisu, mislim da je ova i sama ideja korisna i pozitivna za naš region i mi smo zahvalni svima koji su pokrenuli berlinski proces. Sledeće godine je Velika Britanija se prijavila da bude domaćin. iako su otišli iz Evropske unije, ali nisu otišli iz Evrope, tako da zainteresovani su za naš region. I ono što je, eto, pozitivno, to je da ima dosta prijavljenih kandidata da budu domaćini, što znači da imaju interes. Sljedeće godine Velika Britanija, za onu tamo godinu se prijavila Poljska, ali se prijavila i Srbija, kao što znate. Mi želimo da to bude, da mi budemo domaćini jednog takvog skupa.
So, regardless of often critical stance, so people are looking at the projects, whether they're implemented or not, in what percent they're implemented. This is a very useful idea, a very useful thing that is happening, the Berlin process. We are very grateful to all those that kicked it off, that organized it, and it is causing a general interest still in the West. Next year we are going to meet in Great Britain. Great Britain expressed the interest to be the hosts. They're leaving the European Union, but they're still remaining in Europe. They're interested for our region, and it's also interesting for the whole atmosphere surrounding the process. There are many countries actually expressing their wish, their interest to host the annual meetings. For the year after the next, we have Poland that expressed the wish to be the host. However, we have a little competition already because Serbia would like to host the Berlin process meeting after Great Britain. We would like to be the host for at least one event here.
Možda će United States biti zainteresovani.
Maybe the USA would be willing to host us as well.
Thank you very much for kicking that off. We're going to go to Mr. Srnadak next. But let me just ask you one thing. You're known as a man who says what he really thinks, as a plain-speaking person. I have to say I'm quite surprised. You've been very kind of upbeat about this Berlin process. If I was an ordinary citizen here or in any other country of the region, and I said to you, are you really serious? Are you just being diplomatic in front of all these important people? Or is this something really serious? Is it happening? Is it going to change my life? I'm asking as if I was a citizen of this region. Is it really going to change my life?
Sama taj, još jednom ponavljam, sama ta ideja da se najvažnije zemlje Evropske unije bave i da su na neki način pokrovitelji proširenja Evropske unije na Zapadni Balkan je za nas veoma pozitivna, jer je veoma važno da se to ne izgubi sa agende Evropske unije.
Well, the very idea that the European countries, big European countries, are dealing with the Western Balkans, talking about enlargement, sponsoring the enlargement in the direction of Western Balkans is very important for us. The key thing for us is not to vanish from the map, not to vanish from the agenda.
I ja u tome vidim najveću korist, političku korist. Sve drugo jesu sada neki određeni projekti koji manje ili više će se realizovati ili ne, ali zahvalni smo Nemačkoj pre svega koja je uopšte pokrenula jednu takvu ideju da se o tome raspravlja.
This is the main political useful, the main political benefit of the whole process for me, that we are there, we are on the map. Big European countries are looking at us and sort of directing the enlargement in our direction. What comes with it are other projects. Some of it will be implemented more, some of them will be implemented less. But it's not that relevant, that important politically as us being on the map, and we are very grateful to Germany for having started this whole process and brought the initiative about.
Great, thank you very much.
Kad sam bio premijer, u januaru 2014. je pokrenut proces. Su počeli pregovori sa Evropskom unijom. I ja se nadam da ću biti živ kad se završi.
You know, I was the Prime Minister in January 2014. We started our accession negotiations with the EU. My ambition now is to live long enough to see them finish.
Za razliku od turskih pregovarača.
Unlike Turkish, for instance, negotiators.
Good. Great. Well, okay, Mr. Srnadak, over to you. From where you sit in Bosnia and Herzegovina, are you as optimistic as Mr. Dacic? In Bosnia, sometimes things, it often seems like we're always waiting for something to happen. There's often a feeling in Bosnian politics that it's a kind of equivalent to the play Waiting for Godot. Now looking not just at your own country, but to the rest of the region, do you echo this optimism, or is there a lot of hot air about when it comes to both talking about the Berlin process and EU accession?
Thank you. Na početku, s obzirom da smo u Beogradu, dobro jutro na srpskom svima i drago mi je zaista što sam ovdje, evo prvi put na Beogradskom bezbjednosnom forumu. So good morning everybody once again. I'll try to be short in two parts. One on the benefits of the process, and second more on the issue that you raised at the very beginning. Can people really see the change from everyday life? So first of all, direct answer to the question. There is optimism, and you know it's not easy to have optimism in Bosnia and Herzegovina. 22 years after the war, everybody expected more stability, political stability, a better economy, and certainly that we would be much closer, if not all the way in EU. But there is an optimism, I think, mostly based on a very successful 2016 in terms of our EU integration process. Unfortunately, 2017 wasn't such success. But we still have an opportunity to finish some of the things we started this year and hopefully come to this status of the official candidate in 2018. But a few things on the Berlin process from our point of view. I think there are many benefits. First of all, I think it's important because it put us very strongly on the agenda map of EU. And it's not only the summit in the summer, but I have to say that recently we see much more honest and concrete focus on Western Balkans from EU. I think it's unmeasurable achievement of the Berlin process. Second, I think it helped us to be more closer together, the participants of the Western Balkan Six. I think it helped us boost cooperation in many fields: economy, infrastructure, security. So we were there, all six of us, before this process, but of course, for different reasons, we were not able to manage such strong cooperation. So many meetings, so many things we discussed and communicate. So I think it's also important. Sometimes, I know it's here in Serbia, I know it's back home. Also, in public you can hear some questions like, is it really so important? Because sometimes it seems that we repeat the same things, for example, from different meetings. But I think it is important because in this region, it's never to be taken for granted, the stability and peace and good relations. So I think we should always invest in this, put a lot of effort in keeping this good, open channels of communication and discussion. So this is another benefit for me. Third, I think it's also a direct benefit on the let's say, if you look at it widely, we can call it economy area, where you can speak about infrastructure projects, you can speak about this regional economy integration, getting markets of the six closer to each other, businesses closer to each other. I think the economy effect is also immense, is also huge. And then it brings us also to a very important benefit of the process, which is our joint work on the EU integration process. We are all at different phases. We are all very, very diverse. We have six participants, one of them being Kosovo, 5 other countries, 2 of them not recognizing Kosovo. We have countries that are for a long time candidates, countries that opened, I don't know, so many chapters. You have Bosnia that is not candidate yet. So we are very diverse, but together we are on the same track, EU track. So this is political effect of this. And second, I think it's important that Berlin process helps us. It helps us communicate better with our public, with our own public, because all the good things that come through infrastructure projects, through projects that are seen, used, visible for everybody, for every single person, this does more positive than no matter what statement is made by no matter what minister. So I would say that this sums up a little bit of all the positive things on Berlin process. And one more thing I want to say is what you raised at the very beginning, how to project this to everyday life, to ordinary people, that they see this as really some productive optimism, something that really will bring something good for them. Here I have to have a little bit of self-criticism I'll stay in Bosnia and Herzegovina, I will not go out, but I think it's important that we understand that all the good things that we do in the region, including Berlin process, it cannot substitute some of the things we have to do at home. You know, I'll remain in Bosnia and Herzegovina. For example, we have decreasing numbers on foreign direct investments. We have to think what is the reason for this. It cannot all be done by positive effects of regional cooperation and by positive effects from Brussels and I don't know what capital. So we have to make some improvements. Council of Ministers, governments of Republika Srpska Federation, everybody else who has the role, or for example, efficient, independent judiciary system. You know, we have our problems with fighting corruption, organized crime, with the resolving war crimes issues. You saw the recent ruling on Mr. Oric, and we have so many things that you know just can be helped from us outside, but actually it has to be delivered inside by our institutions. So this is important that you have to have both, so that people get this optimism. Positive effects at home and positive effects of the regional cooperation.
Recently, Mr. Juncker said that, that he was going to reveal some sort of new or special strategy for Serbia and for Montenegro, who he said were in the lead towards joining the EU. How did you see that? Do you see that as annoying in Sarajevo and unacceptable, or do you see that as actually quite useful because it means that you can go back to Sarajevo and to Banja Luka and say, look, you guys, just get your act together, do the stuff that we need to do so that we can move ahead and get candidate status and speed up? I'm thinking a little bit of what happened when the others got visa liberalization and you didn't. Suddenly, everyone seemed to wake up in Bosnia and Herzegovina and run around and do everything that you needed to do in like 2 months, you know, proving that you're quite capable of doing everything that you need to do when you need to do it. But was Mr. Juncker's intervention useful in that sense, or just annoying?
I think it's always useful when we get direct and concrete predictions about how this process will go. Of course, it will be valued and judged upon our performance, but it's good that we have this certainty of the end of the process. So I can repeat just one thing. One initiative I launched last week. I think Bosnia and Herzegovina is at the crucial moment of its Euro integration process. Now it's either we will entirely stop or we will push through. So I think at this moment it's the best moment to have the first joint session of the Council of Ministers and governments of Republika Srpska and Federation, because in Bosnia and Herzegovina we have very complex very complex system with diverse authorities and competencies. For example, reform agenda that we have gathered around together, it's about 65% the competencies on the entities. So we have to do it all together, and I think now it's time to put aside all the daily politics, the fact that next year is election year, and try to concentrate, like you said, on the things that are really important to make the step forward. Because I believe when we go back to our constituencies and voters, we all have something to say, because in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the support for EU integration process of Bosnia and Herzegovina is huge.
Right. But briefly, can you use things like Mr. Juncker's interjection and to basically bash heads back home and say, just do everything that you need to do?
Of course we can use it, but you also have to know that it is not something that will I don't know make people delirious, you know, or
They have very strong heads in Bosnia. You shouldn't.
So it's not a thing that can have that kind of instant effect, but certainly it is something positive.
Okay, thank you. Well, we could pursue this subject, but we unfortunately have to move on. And our next panelist is Christian Hellbach, who is a special emissary of the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Southeastern Europe, Turkey, and EFTA countries. And of course, if Britain has no deal, then you might be adding the UK to your portfolio as a sort of surrounding countries that you have to deal with. But we're not talking about Britain today. How do you feel this process is going? I mean, very often in the last few years, we've heard how when things need to be done or when there's important questions to be asked, prime ministers or presidents lift up the phone and call you. They're not calling Brussels. So there's some responsibility here. And with that responsibility, how do you feel the process is going?
Well,
and do you echo the optimism, the quite surprising optimism that we've heard from the two ministers?
yes, I do. And I would like to start by saying a heartily dobro jutro svima. I'm very glad to be here, and thank you, Sonia, for inviting. Yes, I'm very optimistic, and because in the first place, back in 2014, when Chancellor Merkel took the initiative, we thought of a series of conferences, actually 5 conferences, and then we thought it would be over, and now we find out that everyone wants to carry on. So I think that this speaks for itself. It seems to be very successful. People seem to believe that it does add value to the efforts, to other efforts, and mainly the effort to bring the region closer to the European Union. And previous speakers have mentioned a number of areas and specific projects where the Berlin process has done good things and actually added to current efforts, and mainly where the Berlin process has helped the countries in the region to come closer to each other and cooperate more. And I want to just to point at one of the many other areas which are being discussed in the Berlin process and are not in the limelight, and this is the creation of a Western Balkans Research Foundation, which is something we believe is extremely important because it will enable the region to make a leap forward in terms of research and development, which is extremely important for the competitivity of the region, because and it might be an important contribution to help the region to come out of the famous middle income trap. So just to call one of the very interesting and useful activities, and I would also very clearly say what the Berlin process is not. It is not meant to be kind of a replacement for European integration. It is very important to make this point because some of the countries in the region have expressed certain reservations because they thought that the Berlin process is just, a prolongation of the waiting room. No, it is not meant to be a replacement for European integration. And this is at least what I can say very, very clearly as a representative of the German government. We do stand by the commitment undertaken by the European Union in 2003 in Thessaloniki. There is a European perspective for the Western Balkans, for Serbia and for the other countries in the region. And it is not because we feel some kind of a humanitarian commitment to the region. No. What drives us is our own national interest. It is in the interest of the European Union. It is in the interest of Germany to bring these countries closer to the European Union. But at the same time, and this is what a point that was made very clearly by my minister during an Aspen conference in May in Berlin, where he said very clearly that we believe that the European Union and its member states, very important, still need to make more efforts to support the efforts here in the region to bring about transformation. He also said during this conference that there will be, there's no way around, no one should fool him or herself. The approach needs to be conditions-based. We believe that in order to bring about what we think is the purpose of this whole exercise, which is making the Western Balkans a better place to be, making these countries secure countries, prosperous countries, countries where people enjoy justice, for this, transformation needs to happen. We insist, and sometimes people say we're boring because we always insist on this conditionality. We believe that we will not get where we want to get if no transformation happens. And, these countries, and I think most people know it, these countries need transformation. Even if there was no European perspective, they would need transformation, because in order to stand a chance in globalization, in order to be attractive and competitive.
Okay, well, you say it's in Germany's interest to bring in the Western Balkans. Probably most people in this room would agree with you. The question is whether German voters would agree with you.
Well, I think that some of us and some of the also experts spend too much time in discussing what might be the miracle cure for the Western Balkans, how the silver bullet might look like in order to bring about change and transformation here, and we tend to forget that enlargement requires a minimum support. Let me put it like this: a minimum support back home. And this Berlin Plus initiative is geared precisely towards generating the necessary political momentum and support back home, and to convince mainly our parliament but also our public of the necessity and of our interest in bringing about change, and the necessity to invest in order to get there.
Can you tell us in 1 minute what does Berlin Plus mean?
Berlin Plus is mainly an appeal to our public, to our parliament, but also to other member states to engage more heavily, because otherwise we're afraid that we might fail in this attempt to bring the Western Balkans closer to the European Union.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move to Christian Danielson from the European Commission, Director General for Neighbourhood and Enlargement Negotiations. At the beginning of Mr. Juncker's term, there was his famous statement where he said that no country would join within this mandate, which factually was obvious, but it was interpreted in a different way. It was interpreted as putting a dampener on enlargement and calming, or how should I put it? I don't want to say sort of putting a dampener on enthusiasm, but in a way of addressing those skeptics about enlargement within member states. But now the tone seems to be slightly different, doesn't it? There seems to be sort of more open to enlargement with his statement about Serbia and Montenegro and the new special something that might happen. I'm not quite sure what it is. Maybe you can tell us, and perhaps you can tell us whether you think the Berlin process is useful. So over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I think you're right. It is new wind blowing, and it has to do with several aspects. I think there is a stronger understanding more generally that Western Balkan is very much part and parcel of finding solutions on issues that Europe stands in front of, challenges that are common, be it stability, security, be it the issue of migration, or be it even the economy. And I think there's also a clear understanding that there is a need for the Western Balkan to be clear, and that the commitment that is there since Thessaloniki, that is very clearly also communicated. And I think that was the background to the European Council in March, which did exactly that. And that is also what you find in President Juncker's speech in September. And I would argue that you also see it in other leaders' communication, most recently the President of France speech in Sorbonne. Now your question was, is this process, the regional process, for real? It is, very much so. And let me just point to three elements there, or perhaps four. The first one has already been mentioned, that's the political one. The fact that Western Balkan has become much more on the horizon, on the radar screen than it was before this process started, for the reasons that was mentioned by ministers and also by Mr. Hellbach. The second element is that we see a much more, and I'm a practical man, I'm a bureaucrat, but I think it is in concrete action that we see things happening. And what you have seen is focus on practicalities. It is about building roads, it's about building railways, it's about connecting. And you can see an immense increase in that kind of commitments, both in politically but also in financial terms, since 2014. We are up to 900 million euros now in commitments for everything from the East Med Railway going through Serbia, to the Peace Highway mentioned by Minister Dacic, to the Blue Highway going down the coast from Croatia towards Albania, to the gas interconnector between Bulgaria and Serbia, etc. That's real. The second element is when it comes to the economy. This regional economic area is a big political commitment by the leaders here. It's a real commitment. And it boils down to seeing to that investments will be more important in this region, but more importantly, to see to that this 18 to 20 million, depending on how we count, market becomes more integrated. If you look on the figures when it comes to trade between the different countries in the Western Balkan today, there is a huge potential for increasing it. And that means growth, and that means concrete also prosperity, and that means also employment. So that's the second element. And the third element I would point to is the whole issue of reconciliation. It was mentioned here by Minister Dacic, the fact that ministers, leaders are meeting on a regional basis and discussing, and also finding ways of solving bilateral issues. I don't know, but Minister Dacic knows it much better than I, but I think the maybe misunderstandings between the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia and Serbia, that it was useful to meet in Durrës between the leaders, which was in the context of this regional cooperation. And there it's also concrete. RICO, which is this youth office in Tirana, led by a Serbian citizen, having as a deputy a Kosovo citizen, is something which is about youth meeting up, creating the space for talking to each other, learning to know each other. And for our part, we will work very hard in seeing to that is complemented by Erasmus and by other regional initiatives, such as the exchange of civil servants, young civil servants, between the different countries, which is happening right now. So it is real. But let me just also point to the challenge. What this boils down to be successful is action on the ground. And there it was mentioned by several around the panel here. It goes down to rule of law. It goes down to fighting corruption. It goes down to addressing the technical barriers to trade that exist and that are difficult. It boils down to addressing the issue of the certification of foodstuff for this to work. for this to work. And I was on a panel 2 days ago in Tirana, and I met the business community, and they all were for the regional economic area. They said, this is great. You know, when I talk to investors from Europe or from the EU, or for that sake, investors in Albania, we would like to have a market of 18 million. But then they said, you know, for that to happen, there are issues about rule of law that needs to be addressed. There is the issues about building permits that needs to be addressed. There are issues about the concrete actions which are national. So for this to be successful, there is also a need to address those issues which are difficult and which are, and that leads me to my last point, which are part and parcel of the whole issue of the enlargement agenda for the countries concerned, or the European perspective, whatever term you use. So I see this as a very much a complementary and important element in bringing all these countries closer and more faster, speeding up in their approach towards coming forward in the European perspective and finally in the enlargement.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I'm afraid we're running short of time, so I'm going to go straight on to Hedvig Morvai. As the director of the European Fund for the Balkans, as a representative of civil society, you don't have a government position, you're supposed, or a political master in that sense. So you can tell us what you really think. And do you share the optimism that we've heard, or since you're free, like freer than the others, do you generally agree, or can we hear something different from you, or tell us what you think?
Thank you very much, Tim. Well, that's what I usually do, and I will try to do it today as well, because I find this topic very important. I find the Berlin process very important, and I would like to, and I completely agree with both of the ministers who were quite positive about simply the fact that it exists. I think it's very important that there is a high-level political venue which exclusively focuses on the European future of the 6 remaining Western Balkan countries. And I think that we should, after 4 summits, and most probably this thinking about the real follow-up will stay there on the agenda even after the 5th summit in Britain next year, to think about some structural changes in order to make it more effective and in order to deliver more for the benefit of the citizens of the Western Balkans. So with our group, the Balkans and Euro Policy Advisory Group, we were thinking about how this process could be steered in a way to achieve this. And we suggest that in the future, it should be even more focused on topics which are the priority. And we all should try to limit and prioritize and to deal with the issues which are key for the developments in the region, which are then real add-ons to the existing accession process. Because that is, I would like to echo what has been already said, that it is crucial to avoid duplexing the existing accession process. And I also think that the structure should be modified by setting tangible annual milestones. I think that it's really missing. This is the way how results could be maybe measured in a better way, and it would also help the communication towards the citizens and towards the constituencies who have to support the implementation of some of the key initiatives. I would, of course, also like to stress the importance to keep the civil society involved exactly for this reason, because civil society, on one hand, can support the process by its expertise, by the fact that it's much more flexible in regional cooperation, but also by mobilizing public support for the initiatives which are emerging in the Berlin process. There are 2 more points I would like to add. One is related to the fact that I think it would be important to use the Berlin process, which I think it proved itself as capable for something like that, and that is to produce tangible success stories, maybe even every year. It was so many times mentioned that the visa liberalization was the incentive for the region. So let's find something what could be motivating enough, not only for the political leadership in the region, but also for the citizens to in a way, re-energize the whole European integration story. So maybe we were thinking about the possibility to maybe adopt the agreement of including the region into the Rome like at home European policy. So maybe it could be broadened somehow to the region. There are already serious efforts in solving this roaming issue within the region, so why not to think, again, including the region in the European Rome like at home policy. I'm very much grateful to Mr. Danielson, who mentioned solving bilateral issues. I think this is something what cannot be what cannot let sidelined. It was a huge success in Vienna. It was launched, there was willingness showed, and I simply cannot think about a real process which is promoting regional cooperation and which is trying to initiate real regional initiatives and to make it sustainable without solving the issues which are actually hampering it. And my final point, I think that the Berlin process could also serve for the regional political leaders to understand that they have the opportunity to take full responsibility for the region's European future, that they have the political avenue to take part in rethinking the future of the European Union, the new European Union into which we are integrating, because we have to be aware of the fact that the Europe of tomorrow into which these countries might get accession one day will look much different than the one with which we started negotiating. So I think this is basically completely in line with the title of this conference. I think the Berlin process is also an opportunity to think about our common future.
Okay, thank you. We've got like 2 minutes left, and unless we finish, I think Sonia is going to come and rip away our microphones. But I'm going to ask you one final question to all of you. The last year has seen increased discussion of this word stabilitocracy, meaning that the EU especially is tolerating increasing authoritarian trends in some countries, abuses of freedom of the media, sometimes turning a blind eye to where maybe there might be an overlap of organized crime and politics, and this Berlin process is part of that, keeping the area stable and in exchange turning a blind eye for some of the more unpleasant aspects. Is that true? Shall I start with you, Mr. Sinodak? Is it yes or no? Is that a problem?
I think it's more a question for not for us from the region, but for those who you're referring to. But I don't think, anyway, I don't think that's a good thing to do. It's, I think it's good for the countries and for the countries on their way to EU to really change. First of all, to get strong, independent institutions. And I don't think some shortcuts can help. And I think there should be no compromises on the undemocratic and anti-European issues and acts. And I think it's pretty much clear, at least from my point of view, that that kind of let's say rotten compromises cannot bring anything positive.
Okay, but Hedvig, what do you think?
Well, I would say that we don't have the luxury, even if we say, well, that is something. Decline of democracy is something what's happening in the EU itself, and some of the EU member states are facing this problem very heavily as well. But simply the region, the countries of the region have no luxury of accepting it, because we have to deliver in order to change the situation in our countries to live a normal life.
Okay, Mr. Hellbach?
It is not true, because there is no long-term stability without democracy and without rule of law. And I think that I made it very clear in my first intervention. We do place a lot of importance on these issues. We do believe that what this transformation process needs to deliver is a change of the structures and habits of governance. We need responsible, transparent and democratic governance. This is the precondition for long-term stability. So I don't see any kind of opposition between stability and democracy.
Mr. Danielson?
Not true. And if we see on the enlargement process, the issue of values, the issue of fundamental rights, the issue of rule of law, the issue of fighting corruption, the issue of fighting international organized crime comes top on the agenda in all discussions we have and in all the things we do.
Okay. And finally to you, Mr. Dacic.
Pa znate šta, teško je odgovoriti na to pitanje, a ne proširiti ga da je to jedan globalni fenomen.
It's difficult to answer your question without broadening it and saying it's a global phenomenon, actually.
I da je to prisutno, takav jedan način razmišljanja je prisutan i kod velikih sila kada donose odluku o, da sada ne spominjem zemlje, ali ko je član, kad su izbori za Ujedinjene nacije, pa za komisija za ljudska prava, vidite dobro, kad Saudijska Arabija osvoji ogromnu većinu glasova, da nešto tu nije baš u skladu sa standardima. Ali, s druge strane, imate i demokratske sisteme koji nisu mnogo uložili u stabilnost regiona. Tako da dosta je tu, zavisi šta hoćemo. Ja mislim da bi bilo najbolje da demokratija rezultira time da to bude temelj za stabilne odnose u regionu. I ne verujem da je ovaj naš region previše izuzetan, da bi Evropska unija zbog nas pravila takve vrste izuzetaka i žmurila. Mi imamo primjedbe da ona mnogo više žmuri na nešto što nas boli, da ne vrednuje isto zemlje. Nama se čini da Evropska unija na jedan način, na jedno oko gleda zemlje koje su članice Evropske unije, a na druge zemlje koje nisu članice Evropske unije. Tako da ovima koje jesu članice Evropske unije je mnogo više toga dozvoljeno nego onima koji nisu. Ali, tako da sve ima svoje relativne kategorije. Meni je drago da na kraju da kažem da drago mi je da je Sonja Licht uopšte pokrenula ovaj forum, jer Beograd ima malo ovakvih foruma, malo međunarodnih konferencija. Sa radošću smo primili vest da su se Ruska federacija i Sjedinjene Države srele kod nas ovde u Beogradu da razgovaraju o Ukrajini. Srđan Darmanović je došao ovde da razgovara sa Fincima i Šveđankom. Beogradu je potrebna veća međunarodna promocija i veće prisustvo u javnosti. Ja sam zaboravio na prevodioce, izvini, molim te.
Nije nikakav problem. Give you this in a second.
Možda skratiš na 2 rečenice.
Neću reći, hvala. The Minister told me I can sum it up in 2 sentences. As I said, it's difficult to talk about this without making it a more sort of global topic. This tabulocratic approach is a feature of the behavior of a way of thinking of the big powers today. And if you look how countries around the world are treated, not to cite too many names, what's happening in the UN, if you have Saudi Arabia elected sort of in the human rights boards, then something's not quite as it should be, obviously, there. In our view, the democratic processes in the region should lead to the stability of the region. They should not be compromised. But that's the stable countries in the region, stable democracy, that's what we want, that's what Europe wants. And I do not believe that this region, the countries in this region, have enough specific weight for Europe to make exemptions and treat us in a different way as they would treat anybody else. On the other hand side, I can add that sort of turning a blind eye on this or that, I believe actually that we are the ones who are on the hard end of this sort of blind eye story. it's my impression that Europe turns more blind eye to what member states are doing as opposed to what non-member states are doing. If you're a member state, you're allowed much more to pass than if you're not a member state. And also I would like to say that I'm delighted that Sonia organized this conference because we need more visibility in Belgrade. I was delighted, for instance, that Russians and Americans met here to discuss Ukraine, or our friends from Croatia met Finns and Swedes also. So that's what we need here in Belgrade, more visibility of the region.
Thank you very much. I feel I should apologize because we've run out of time, and I just feel we were just actually beginning. We could have gone on all morning, but unfortunately we're going to now finish this panel because we've got the Prime Minister coming and Ms. Gottmuller, the Deputy Secretary General of NATO. I've been asked to tell you all to stay there. There's going to be a logistics. They're going to change the microphones, etc., to prepare for the Prime Minister and Ms. Gottmuller. And I would just ask you to join me to say thank you to our panel.